could you please introduce yourself and describe what you do?
My name is John Pawson. I'm an architect, and I suppose I do what architects do, which is build buildings.
What sort of buildings?
Well, a full range, really. I think most people think of architects in a sort of dry sense, but architects we turn our hand from a spoon, to a monastery. So it sort of covers quite a wide area. I mean, we've done bridges and boats and books and ballet sets.
Some people get quite grumpy's not the word, but some people have noted that actually you didn't finish your degree in architecture.
Yeah, the thing is of course I'm quite careful because legally you can't in England describe yourself as an architect with a capital A. But of course, if somebody says what do you do and you skirt around it, they say, oh, you mean an architect? So it's difficult. I think it's good to have rules, and I think it's good to have breaks and restrictions. There's no harm in that at all. But I just didn't finish my course, which is probably not a good thing. But it hasn't stopped me building.
Why don't you think it's a good thing?
Why don't I think it's a good thing?
That you didn't finish. You've gone on to be this massively successful brand. You're a brand architect, so it presumably it's absolutely fine you didn't finish school.
Yeah, the main reason I didn't finish was because I'd come to it rather late. I was 30 when I started architecture school, and I suppose I was in a hurry to sort of get on with what I wanted to do. But I think I still could have learned quite a lot. What I hadn't realized was that you can teach design. I just thought that was something that other people could do, and at the time I couldn't. But, I went to school and I learned to design, and it's only gotten easier in a sense. It's very, very hard work designing, and it's a very serious business, but starting with a blank piece of paper isn't quite as frightening as it used to be.
And your design is rigorous. You've decided to really become a master of minimalism. Can you talk a little bit about first how you came to minimalism and what it is in that genre that is so appealing and is something that you keep returning to?
I think it's something, minimalism or liking things pared down or enjoying the freedom and the clarity of space, sort of unadorned space and uncluttered space, was instinctive. I think from an early age, that's apparently, according to my 4 sisters, I was a little bit mad from the beginning. So, but it isn't something that I don't think you come in and out of, because it suits the way, that I want to lead my life and live, really. I never really expected other people to get it or necessarily wanted. It was something that I did for myself, and it's been rather nice that I've been able to make a career or a job or an office out of it.
Yeah, it's interesting you already brought your family into it, because your son found out that we were doing this interview and asked me prompted me to talk about he didn't call it a uniform, but he said that you wear the same thing often, and it seems that the rigor to what you design does bleed into your life, right?
Yes, I'm never. It's easy for me to say because life has been. I've been very, very lucky and comfortable, but I don't really like stuff. I like the right tools to do the job, or to enjoy cooking, or anything you need to do. But having more than I need seems in a way something to weigh you down. So I don't like, it just makes it easier for me if I have a very simple wardrobe. But my wife Catherine said that she couldn't understand when she first met me that somebody who was so particular about the architecture could have such a dress sense, or lack of it.
Do you is your approach to design, minimal though it is do you find repetition comforting?
Do you mean repetition in the sense architectural repetition?
Yeah.
Repetition? I think it's one of the tenets of I tried in a book, for Phaidon, the illustrative book company, they asked me to define the notion of simplicity in art and architecture. And I sort of, to make it easier for myself and have examples, repetition was one of the things that I felt in a strange way, even though it's more, the repetition is in some ways is somehow simplifying.
And do you think there's some perfect form that you're going to eventually find? Do you know, is this, minimalism was born out of this reaction against abstract expressionism, really? In the most simplest way of looking at it. But for you, are you designing to some final magnum opus?
No. No, I just like to make spaces that feel good and that people feel good in. And I think one of the things that people or you can sort of tell is when I'm there and people walk into spaces that I've done, you can see them physically reacting. They sort of, it seems to make them feel good. And that's really rewarding. And I think that's kind of what I'm after. I think that the idea of minimalism as a reaction, I think, obviously in the art world, it's a very, very different thing to what I do. I'm not the one that called it minimalism. The architecture side of it or the design side of it. It's just a handy pigeonhole for people, I think. I'm not sort of refuting it or anything. It's just that it's so much more than that.
Well, I think that's true. And actually, one of the things I did want to get into was the show you did 4 years ago at the Design Museum. You installed an empty room, and that felt quite performative. And exactly as you're saying, it felt like it was about being in a space and experience what it's like to be in that space and to have a moment of pause. And there's been lots of documentation of your clients describing what it's like to live in your homes. So in particular, a journalist who was talking about, this bowl of red apples and this sort of perfectly restrained hanging of a Robert Ryman, and that was all she had, and she got rid of a bunch of stuff and put it into storage. And that way of living wasn't something that had come naturally to her, but that by being in your space and actually being with you had changed the way she lived. How much do you think about that, the effect that you have on people in your spaces?
I think it's, architecture, in some ways, it's a service business. You're obviously you're putting up buildings for people, and you're designing them around how people live rather than the other way around. I think on the other hand, you want to make them as special as possible, the spaces. And I think, collaborating with the client or with whoever it is, the team, you produce these things, and then I think it also makes people perhaps modify that, how they live in a sort of positive way. So they're very, very, they're very exciting places, calming, but also stimulating. It's a kind of, in a sense, that's a contradiction, but they are nice places to be in.
Do you ever leave like an instruction manual that says this is how you should do this?
Well, I'm very rigorous about the work, but I'm not a very rigorous policeman, and I think, I'm very, very lucky that the partnerships that I've made in terms of clients have been amazing, and it's that combination of that I think makes successful architecture. I mean, you can't, you need that sort of balance of somebody pushing you, but also listening and trusting and having the courage, really.
And so you've just done Lifehouse, which is the 8th residence in the Living Architecture series, right? But what I thought was interesting about that was that's an instance where you're designing a house for people to rent, right? To go into these beautifully contemporary modern spaces that they wouldn't normally have access to. Is it difficult to design without a particular client in mind? I mean, so much of what you do seems to be a very intimate collaboration with people that you're making homes for, or I mean, in the instance of Edition Hotels with Ian, is it more difficult to design if you don't know who in particular is going to use the space?
It definitely is, but on the other hand, I can't design without. I think that's why design is so tiring, and you need to work so hard at it, because all the time you're designing, you're thinking about yourself in the space, personally. So so in a sense, the Lifehouse I've done, I suppose, is what I feel people would really like, to stay in for the weekend and arrive at after, possibly quite a long journey. And it's quite remote, so I think it's somewhere you sort of walk, in the hills from, rather than, going to town all the time.
And I guess that's why you've been such a huge success, because you've managed to not only design a monastery in the Czech Republic, but then, you can put on a completely different hat and do Calvin Klein headquarters or their head shops in New York, right? You do these mass commerce, you do these homes, you do a monastery. How do you negotiate all those completely different projects? How do you feel your way through?
Well, the approach is the same, whether it's small or very, very, large and complex. I mean, a monastery is like a small city, and it has everything sort of in it. But of course, I didn't realize how complicated something like a spoon is, or a cook pot. I mean, and we did some cook pots, and if you include the lid and the handles and the base and the sides and the curves and the this and that, I mean, I think I counted there's something like 37 parts that need designing and fitting together. I mean, of course, you have a lot of help, but it's the same approach, and the same with the ballet set. It's all, and I'm sort of interested in doing different things too.
Are you ever sad when you walk away, when you're finished, when it's no longer yours?
No. I mean, it's no. I'm kind of used to it now, because up until people take ownership of it, it's you sort of you stride around as if it's yours, and then of course you're a guest. But I mean, we never really walk away anyway. I mean, you're always involved, and obviously clients become friends or become partners, or it's work partners. So it's you don't walk away. I suppose that's what I'm saying.
And what's this week like for you? So you've opened the residences here at Edition this week. Is it? I asked Ian this because I thought it was interesting that collectively you guys chose to do this during the most sort of frenzied moment in Miami. You have the most critical, creative people in the world here. What's it like for you to do this now?
It's quite overwhelming, and it's not really, what I do. I mean, this idea of, and it's sort of difficult because I sort of try, obviously that, everyone's very excited about the residences and there's you get a lot of compliments, but, I'm always trying to say, it's a team thing and this comes about by hard work. And of course, I think they can't quite understand why I'd want to sort of argue, that how brilliant they all are. It's sort of, for me, I'm always, I always sort of reserve some sort of critical judgment about things. So, I'm more interested in sort of how they've turned out, or how things are affected, or the light, or something that, in a way, I can learn, I suppose, for the next one.
Is that why you take so many pictures?
I don't know. I think the photography might be kind of therapy in a sense. But because I always feel that, because I travel a bit and life seems to pass so quickly, I always feel if I've taken a photograph, if I've somehow captured, I haven't lost that moment. Of course, it's rubbish, really.
But on the surface, it could seem, you've just but you've put out this beautiful book of endless photographs, which to someone who is so pared down in their aesthetic and is so seemingly about the simplification of beauty, to put out a book with, I don't even know how big that book is, but it's big. It's a lot of photos. Do you ever feel like those weigh you down?
Not really. I think it's interesting because Catherine, sort of is kind of an impatient walker. So when I would stop to take a picture, it sort of, she didn't want to hang around, and so it's sort of, she kept saying, how many shadows, can you photograph? And also, she felt I should edit, but of course I realized that there's no point in editing with digital photographs because, it's just a waste of time. It's better to choose the odd one that's good, and that's why Phaidon heard about what I did, and they just thought it might make an interesting book for their readers. I suppose I suppose they saw it as being, how I see things, I suppose it is, and I think what I was trying to show, perhaps other people, if they were interested, was that the rigorous and simplified spaces, which I do to sort of allow the light, to allow you to appreciate the space and the light, comes, from a sort of scrambled brain. And a lot of editing, and a lot of color, and I don't just photograph, black and white or squares, squares on a wall, or I can see interesting things in everywhere, really. And
you ask that of your team as well, right? You want them to take lots of photos when they're at a site.
Well, I want a lot from my team, but they don't always do what I ask. We're a group of very, very independent, men and women, and they're obviously highly intelligent people can be quite stubborn, but kind of goes with the territory. Sometimes they'll take a photograph.
Since we're talking about your team, what was it like working with Ian?
Well, Ian is, he's one of those, my feeling is that, I've been very, very lucky with my sort of choice of partnerships or collaborations, and Ian is definitely there. I mean, because he's so passionate about getting things right and sort of pushing things, and interestingly, considering what's gone in the past, he we share. I mean, he does like what I do, which is always a positive thing, and he will fight to kind of make it happen. So it's a good guy to have sort of on your side.
Has it been different having corporate America behind you on this project?
Well, the very nice thing about that is that successful companies with sort of bright, successful people in them and systems. I mean, when I was talking about sort of architectural rules, in a way, it's quite good having some sort of structure, like Marriott have, and they're very, very straightforward people, and you know exactly where you are. I mean, whatever they say is exactly what's going to happen, and in a sense, that's quite nice to have as a sort of foil to, I suppose, the creative process.
So then, for you, what's the, churches used to be the thing that everyone wanted to design, or every architect wanted to design for obvious reasons, given where the money was many, many years ago. But for you, what is the space you want most to design?
Well, I've been very lucky, I think, so far. I mean, it's, quite a few boxes have been ticked, really. I thought they were joking when they asked if I considered doing a monastery. I mean, I thought it was a practical joke, because, to be given a Cistercian Trappist, monastery to do from a new build, I mean, it was just incredible, sort of difficult to follow that. I mean, I still haven't done, public baths or, a lot of things that I thought I might have done by now, the problem with things like hospitals or airports, I think, is it doesn't come to a small practice. You can't, because there are all so many specialist things involved that a client wouldn't normally come to some people like us.
The design museum is going to be quite big.
Yeah, that is very big, yes. And I mean, I think that's probably our most demanding and certainly spatially, it's the most exciting project that we've got. I mean, it's 100,000 square feet, so it's quite a, with a sort of existing soaring ceiling, which was the 60s, late 50s roof or building.
Well, for all of that, thank you. I think I'll ask one last question and then let you go. But for you, what's the point of it all? Why build homes? Why build a museum? Why build a monastery? What's the driving force behind your entire practice?
I think, I never set out to to have an office, really. I mean, I was, because at the beginning I didn't think that I could design, and my father didn't want me to become an architect and didn't want me to go to architectural school. And then when I got, but I, I'd noticed that the things that excited me most, in life was, going into what I would call architecture, which is buildings that are special, whether they be churches or halls or houses or whatever. So I realized that, so to be able to kind of do that myself has been incredible. And I just do it because it's what really excites me.